I thought the human heart had a finite capacity and that I already knew the boundaries of it. I was like, well, I love what I do, and I love my hobbies, and I love my wife, and I love my cats, and I love coffee, and I love all this other stuff. And the only way for me to love a new thing would be to get rid of something I love in my life. But what I found is that, the human heart has this ability to grow and welcome new things. It didn't diminish any of my other loves and didn't even necessarily overshadow them. It just was like, oh yeah, there's plenty of space. Like, let's open it up and welcome this first child, which I gotta say, having experienced that once made it so much easier to have a second child.
Welcome to Thrivist, where we share real stories, psychology, practical wisdom, and hope. We're here to inspire you with stories of overcoming and the lessons people learn along the way. We believe in humanity, and we know that we can all build resilience and thrive. Or at least low-key thrive at best.
Hey, Thrivist friends. Has anyone listening struggled to embrace the idea or even the reality of becoming a parent? Wow. Well, we hear a lot about the postpartum journey for women, postpartum depression, the impact of miscarriages, and of course, trying to find that elusive work-life balance that moms go after for most of their life. But what about from the dad's point of view? What about for the guys? What is that transition like as they look to become a father? Now, today's episode is ideal for any dads who are wrestling with the idea of becoming a parent. My co-host, AudrieAna, sits down with Mike Jorgensen. Mike opens up to AudrieAna about his fear of not being the main character in his own life. That's pretty legit, right? Mike didn't want to give up his me time, his hobbies, and hanging out with his friends, and yet realized when you become a parent, there are sacrifices that we make. Mike also opens up about his bouts with depression in his 20s and what that season of life taught him. This honest conversation leaves us all with a reminder that the heart grows rather than shrinks in life. Now, if you're facing any change, Mike is here to remind us we don't have to be ready. We don't even have to be willing sometimes. Just showing up is the biggest first step. And then the feelings will follow. Now listen as well throughout this conversation as Mike leans into pillar number 8, fostering strong connections. And he's actually doing that today through his parenting community. And again, strong connections. Here at Thrivist, we have connection defined as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. Thank you, Brene Brown, for weighing in on that great definition. We know that our connections with others will never exceed the depth of connection with ourselves. So this work begins within, and Mike is doing the work. Enjoy this conversation today.
Well, Mike, it's so good to have you on the Thrivist podcast. I'm so appreciative that you took the time to fill out a questionnaire, have coffee with me, and decide to come on. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
No buybacks.
No. And what I want everyone to know out there is Mike and I and how we know each other. And that is that Mike and I go to the same church in Cincinnati, Ohio. We attend the Mission Cincinnati, and Mike was part of the community and now is part of the community in a new way as one of the pastors. So, but the other fun thing that Mike and I sometimes get to do together is sing as he plays guitar. As you can see in the background, all of the guitars.
Yes. Oh, if only that were all of them.
Really? So people are going to hear about what you're interested in. So why don't we just start out by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a Cincinnati native and currently residing in Cincinnati. I started working in full-time ministry at age 22, which was a little bit, at least by modern practice, putting the cart before the horse, because I did that before I had finished my college degree, which is a whole long story that we may or may not get into, but went into youth ministry and have collected roles of assistant pastor, worship director, youth pastor, and now pastor of operations and interim music director at our Anglican church. But I went to finish my undergrad, did my MDiv at Covenant Theological Seminary in St. Louis, lived there for 4 years and change. And outside the church, I do, I podcast regularly, hence the, expensive chain of equipment going from my mouth to the computer. And that's like a really niche podcast. It's like a book club for indie comic books, just niche upon niche. And then I have a YouTube channel where I do guitar stuff, and that none of that justifies the, like the boondoggle of a YouTube channel does not justify the wall of guitars behind me, but does help explain it a little bit. Other than that, I think pretty standard guy my age interests. I watch sports. I am a really big coffee enthusiast. I've always loved listening to music and now collect it on vinyl. And I'm married and I have 2 daughters that are currently about to be 4 and about to be 9 months old.
Wow. Okay. So I would love for people to get to hear you play sometime, because you are really great at guitar.
I'll record a little thing for you to use as the podcast intro.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. We can put a little noodle on there. But here I am. We're such newbies at a podcast here, and I'm here without my co-host Emily. So Emily, we hope you're having a really great vacation in Africa right now.
Whoa.
And yeah. So cool what she's doing with her family. So hope it's a great trip, and we can't wait to get you back, Emily. But here we are, newbies at Thrivist podcast. And I mean newbies. Like, I think this episode might be episode 10. I'm not sure. I have to go back and count. So we are newbies. And here you are with 2 podcasts that are consistent. I mean, what's that been like for you?
It was an interesting choice. I had done a podcast starting back in 2016 that I kind of was just engrafted into a thing my friends were doing. And then this is going to pivot very nicely into our story, because when we were about to have our first child, I was so worried about losing my hobbies that I reached out to a friend of mine, Alex, and I was like, Alex, I've got this huge reading list and I go to you for reading recommendations all the time. Would you like to start a podcast so we can, like, basically to keep me accountable, to make sure I keep reading, keep staying up with the things that are important to me? And he was like, yeah, of course. And I think my wife was concerned about the time commitment I was making on top of, what she knew was coming and what I would be blindsided by. But we have had since June of 2022, we have had a weekly episode come out, and that has included the birth of 2 children, a multi-week trip to Europe for me, multi-week vacations for him. I was hospitalized for 5 days unexpectedly because I nearly died from a weird gallstone thing. So, it's been a really good structure to kind of build my life around, and I find that that's it's the type of thing I used to balk at, and now I really crave those type of structures, because it's a nice in between of, like, I have to read a book every single week to come on the podcast and do a book club discussion. So I have the hard deadline, and setting deadlines for myself with someone who all through childhood and adulthood struggle with ADD. You tend to wait till the deadline to start things. So setting a weekly deadline was really, really helpful. And eventually I learned healthier rhythms for this. And it was something I wanted to do, which is another big thing for, ADD is having some internal motivation rather than, in school, it's a lot of external motivation unless you happen to be lucky enough to get it internally.
Yeah.
But yeah, your body will not reward you with dopamine for normal things that people get
Don't interest
dopamine
you.
for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone interested, of course, so there's a podcast on guitars and there's a podcast on, is it comic, but it's something, is it classic comic?
It's indie and creator owned comics. So it's not Marvel and DC. It's not superheroes. It's like people who tell slice of life type stories. There's all kinds of genres. It's a big, big world. But these creators don't quite get the spotlight that, big movie adaptation people get.
Okay. So if any of you are out there and you or know someone who have these interests, we are going to link these in the show notes. Just because some of you may really connect with Mike and want to know more about him and hear more from him on his hobbies. I wanted to start with when I read your story, and knowing each other as friends is one thing, but then reading your story is something very different. And you talk about some challenges in life and how you overcame them. One was a struggle with school from a young age, all the way up into when you finally went and got your master's. Can you say a little bit about that, starting with your younger years?
Yeah, I'll try not to I have a tendency to put myself on the couch and try to psychoanalyze as I go. So I'll try to just give you the no spin version.
Do whatever you need to do.
But my earliest speculation is that I had an incredibly high achieving older sister who's 2 years older than me. And I realize it's kind of folk psychology to get into birth order psychology, but I have found it helpful because I have also been able to recognize middle children everywhere I go, because I think we give off a certain vibe. But I think the middle child will quickly realize if I do exactly what they did, it will be, oh, great, he also did that. It's a less significant achievement to be the second one to do that. So you start trying to differentiate yourself by drawing attention to yourself in other ways. And so, I was always flourishing a little bit more socially, and we were all active in sports, but I was the one who really, really got serious. I mean, starting in 7th grade, I had a personal trainer and I was lifting weights and taking protein and all this stuff, every week and year round. So I really got into that type of stuff at the expense of school. And I think the fairest assessment is to say, I was a solid B student. I would get occasional A's, a lot of B's, an occasional C, and neither the C or the A meant anything to me at all. It couldn't have meant less. So I was just whatever was supposed to happen when you see those letters on a page just doesn't register for me. Mm-hmm. And to the point where, I was diagnosed by basically every other year there was a teacher sending me to a doctor to test for ADHD, because they're like, it seems like he's smart enough, but he's not doing any of the work. So it's 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, sending me back to the doctors again and again and again. And, never could quite figure out what it was, but I was always thriving on the side, kind of sports, and then eventually got into music and went hard into music. I mean, the summer of my freshman and sophomore year, I think I was playing about 8 hours a day. I had one guitar and I was changing the strings at least once a week because they were getting worn out. So yeah, I do have the hyperfocus gift.
Yes, that is one of the gifts of ADHD.
Right. People always talk about the downsides, but the gifts can be wonderful if you can harness them.
Yes.
So anyway, I did that, went to college because I was supposed to, change majors, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. I mean, pretty classic liberal arts story in some ways. Struggled for a long time, settled into philosophy. I think this is probably another ADHD highlight. Took all of my core classes, all the 300 level philosophy classes I did. What I had not done was the general education, the freshman year survey. The stuff that's supposed to be the layups, right? Yeah. Right. It's well, you have a language requirement, you have a math requirement, you have an English requirement. But I immediately found the things I was interested in and did those. And all that was left was this high school 2.0 part of the curriculum, which was like the literal death of me. Like I was like, I cannot make myself sit through 5 classes at a time at this. So I switched to working full time in a job I loved and doing night school at another university that didn't have philosophy as a major. So then all of my philosophy credits went to general education or like humanities or extra credit. So I graduated with, I don't know, 30 more credit hours than I needed when I graduated because they were just unused electives. Because I think this was back when University of Cincinnati was on quarters. So you were knocking out 5 classes 3 times a year. And I had 10 300 level philosophy classes and 1 500 level, which more satisfied the requirement for philosophy, but not for a bachelor's degree. So anyway,
so it was a long, winding road. It sounds like.
Would not recommend it. Like if I was giving career or vocational advice, would not recommend it. Yeah, but I am also, while I am social, I am not someone who was opening up to people about things as they happen. I will talk to anyone about this now. And I think the wonderful gift is the more I have shared this with people, the more other people come back. Not only do they not judge me, which is why I don't share, because I expect to be judged, but also how many people have gone through similar things, perhaps not even at the scope or scale, sometimes a lot worse than what I had. I mean, I would never name them, but like someone else from our church, another man, went through the same thing and actually failed out of college before re-enlisting in another school like a year later and finishing it, and he's doing great now.
Yeah. So, and that's what you said too. It's like, even though it took you a really long time to get your bachelor's because it was a long winding path, you finished and then decided to go to get a master's, which I think is amazing.
Well, I knew that my career would be stalled. Like I wanted to go be a pastor, and no one will let you be a pastor without a master of divinity. So I was like, I know I have to get this degree, and I dislike being in an educational setting so much that if I stop right after I graduate from my bachelor, I don't know if I would ever find the motivation to get back into the swing of things. And then I had a similar debate when I was finishing my master's. I was like, do I want like a PhD or a doctorate? If so, I should go straight to it. Otherwise, I will fall off the wagon and I'll never get back on.
You were working with the brain you were given.
Yeah.
You were working with your internal motivation going, if I don't do it now, I won't do it. And you knew that.
Well, not just that, but also the fact that I felt at that point in life that I was already so far behind. I was really self-conscious being a 27-year-old at seminary in the first class there, because I would say 80% of the student body were people who went straight from undergrad to grad school. So I had like 5-6 years on everyone. What I didn't know is that was actually an incredible advantage, because the 5-6 years I had on everyone were 5-6 years in the field they all wanted to enter.
Yeah.
So you can tell in a seminary classroom someone who has never worked in a church before versus someone who's worked with, like, the questions they ask and the answers they give are so different. Like, I was like, some of you are in for like a really rude awakening. Like, this is not going to be anything like you think it's going to be.
Right. You had a lot of experience as you went into that. And I had the same kind of situation where I went to grad school later, much later than you did in life. And there's trade-off, because you do bring a lot of life experience into your education and into the papers you're writing, etc. As a part of that school struggle, if I recall, as I was reading, I think you said something about having a bout of depression. Was that during the school struggle portion? I know it kind of came later too, which we might talk about, but
yeah, I would say it was, if I can get, I think as approximate as I can get, is about 2 years, from like age 20 to 22. And I mean, it's like the strangest haze in my memory of like, I have little vignettes, but I don't remember anything specific I did during that 2-year window. Like, that's just how lost and adrift I was. And I think if you had asked me at the time if I was depressed, I probably would have said no, and I wouldn't have thought I was lying. I mean,
Yeah.
I was that, like, my window of what is normal had shifted because I was in it for so long that I just forgot what not being depressed was, and that was a thing. Yeah, it's it, in some ways that's actually a gift, because it's like, man, it was really, really dark, but I didn't even have any idea how bad it was.
Well, I'm sure as a pastor, you probably have now, some new empathy for anyone who is in that dark tunnel that they don't even realize. I mean, you have some life experience to be able to say, I don't know how you exactly feel, but I know what it can be like, what it was like for me.
It is actually amazing how careful I am with that, because I never want to overlay my experience onto someone else's or tell them that I know what they're going through or whatever. But I will share, like, even in the 30-second version, like I just did, of like, I was so lost for a couple years of my life and I really don't remember anything, and I was so depressed I couldn't function, and I would sleep till noon, get up, and I'm like, there was just a whole semester where I just didn't go to class. And apparently I'm going backwards from the evidence
Right,
that
right.
I must not have gone to class at all that semester. And it is amazing how quickly people open up to you, of like, oh, he gets it, like, he's safe, I can tell him. And they will insist that I have understood them at a certain level. They're like, because people want to be seen, they want to be understood. And it turns out to be an incredible gift that I'm able to give people who have struggled or are struggling like that, to be able to say, like, it's not like that I read a book about this, like I actually lived it. And the very few people that I've opened up to over the years about my struggles. So I think the first time I articulated that to someone, that I was depressed from age 20 to 22, was probably when I was 27. And I was met with, like, warmth and embrace and encouragement. And I was very, very fortunate. And you would think then that lesson would have caught a little quicker, and that the next time I had struggles, I would be willing to share them more quickly. But it didn't work like that. And then I went through another bout of depression after we had our first kid, and I waited a long time to share that with anyone. But as soon as I did, I was met with this, like, other people saying, like, oh yeah, similar thing. And yeah, so I wish that I could promise to every person in their 20s that if you open up about your struggles to someone else, you will be met by people who are capable and eager to help you. I wish that was a gift that I could promise everyone. But what I can say for certain is that you will not be met by those people if you don't open up.
Yeah.
So
That's
like,
well said.
I would love to say, like, if you play the trust exercise, someone will catch you. I hope and pray that everyone has that in their life, but you will never know whether you have that in your life or not unless you take the first step.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, that's been my encouragement, to a lot of kids in youth ministry and things like that, of like, and youth pastor is another one where it's like a lot of high school students will share things with their youth pastor that's the first person outside their own head they will articulate something to. They're like, I don't know if this is safe to tell my friends. I don't have the relationship with the senior pastor. They're older, but not a parent. So I'm going to share, like, you can get some really heavy things delivered to you. And I had, students in my youth ministry that were like, had attempted suicide, and I had to visit in the hospital, and, all kinds of things and everything in between. And someone's parents dies, and, there's all kinds of tragedies. So you're never insulated from that, even if you try to work with a young audience.
Right, right. Oh, it just makes me think about supporting our youth pastors out there, and they're on the front lines of, they may be the first person that someone shares that with. So I'm really glad that you did have someone in your life that met you with warmth and openness and kindness. And I would say to listeners out there, if you have the unfortunate experience of someone being judgy, someone being, and especially in the church, sometimes we can over spiritualize things and said, oh, just pray it away, which is just not the thing to say. I hope you try somebody else. I hope you keep looking for a softer landing. And obviously, we care a lot about, helping people who are facing depression. So, okay, so you went to your master's and met your wife, and then you guys settled back in Cincinnati. And then I think the second major challenge that you talked about in the questionnaire was the challenge of becoming a parent. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that.
Yeah, I'm socially capable, but I am a person who lives primarily in their own head. My interests are, reading theology and philosophy, abstract stuff, but also pretty prolifically with fiction and music and a lot of this stuff. And even, someone who does like big public teaching, what's like, well, okay, but to get up and talk for 20 minutes, I had spent 20 hours in a room alone to do that.
Preparing, yeah.
And that's about the right ratio for me. It's like 1 hour of me time for every minute of time with people. But that's not a ratio that's sustainable, unfortunately. But
so an introvert for sure is what you're saying.
A social introvert.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy people and being around people, but I just don't have the battery to keep it going for very long. And so my biggest fear about being a parent was that I guess my language that I like to use is that I would be no longer the main character of my own life. Mm-hmm. And I liked being the protagonist. And I was like, and I felt like, I'd been robbed a few years from my depression and my floundering. And even if some of that may have been my fault, it's like, okay, but I'm finally in a place where, I'm working a job I like, and I've got, a house, and I've got, not only do I have the ability to play guitar, but I now have money to buy guitars and explore things in my interests, and all of this stuff that I got to do every single day. I was just so worried about anything that threatened that. Mm-hmm. And I would say, like, the greatest gift anyone can give me in my life is large periods of unstructured time. And I knew that would be going away. And so, and I never really had exposure to babies. Like I tend to have friends that were, 4 or 5 years older than me, or, 4 or 5 years younger than me. And so I've never known, I've never, once my friends had kids, it'd be like, all right, I'll see you when I see you. Which usually I eventually settled into that after noticing that was what happened with most of my friends who had kids anyway. Was like, okay, we're still friends, no hard feelings, but they're busy now. And I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to just not have friends anymore, be social anymore, or do anything else. And I certainly didn't want to not be able to have my me time. So there was a lot of negotiating in there. I never dreamt of having kids. Our premarital counselor, asked us about kids, and, it was like a Wall Street negotiation in a movie where you write down a number on a piece of paper and slide it across the table. That's literally what he did. And I wrote a very large 0, but I think to seem reasonable, it was supposed to be a range of kids that you wanted to have. So I wrote a 0 that took up half the page and then a dash. And I was like, so then I guess, if we accidentally got pregnant or something, or, there's a kid left on our doorstep and we had to raise Harry Potter or something, I'm like, I guess I think only children are weird, so I guess it would be 2. So I wrote a large 0 and a very small 2. And Susan wrote 2 to 4, like a normal person. She just wrote, in a normal size font and everything. And my pastor looked at them and he was like, well, I've got a really easy middle ground, although I don't think Mike is going to like it very much. He's like, it looks like you're both okay with having 2. And I was like, that's not really what I meant. So almost, I don't know, 7 years into our marriage, she finally had been bringing up the topic enough where it was like, okay, well, I guess we won't be like trying aggressively, but we'll prevent anything that would stop it from happening. And so I took this as like a really cautious, passive thing. We were pregnant the next month.
Oh boy.
Because, well, she was like, she had a calendar and she knew like how to do these
had,
things. Yeah.
yeah, she was motivated, and you were like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I thought we were just like, well, we'll leave it up to chance. And
Yeah.
it turns out, you can have your thumb on the scale. So what I thought I was preparing for in the distant future suddenly had a firm timeline on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like so grouchy about it that, I think she like got to the point where she was afraid to talk about it. And I was like, I don't know, we were on a walk probably in May or June of that year, like end of second trimester. And I was like, are we supposed to take like a birthing class or parenting class? Like, is there anything we're supposed to be doing? And she was like, sure. Yeah, I've just been afraid to bring it up because I know what your attitude is going to be about it. And I was like, no, that like, I guess, we'll go do it. And we took a natural birthing class, which, if you're scared of having kids, I recommend a natural birthing class and then not doing natural birthing, because you'll be so grateful for anything else that happens. Because in this birthing class, they show you lots of videos
Lots of stuff.
People without what's the numbing agent?
The epidurals.
The epidural. People without the epidural in prolonged labor and just so much
trying to
screaming and
desensitize you. Yeah, trying to desensitize you to, or get you prepped for this, but
So I was deeply unsettled by that. And then we had to have a C-section because it was a breech baby. And I, ever since then, I tell everyone, I'm like, look, I know the husband doesn't and shouldn't get a vote, but I highly recommend C-sections. Like, we had it on the calendar. We were able to schedule a dinner reservation the night before, knowing like this is our last dinner before the baby comes. And we set our alarms at 7 a.m., pulled up to the hospital at 9. And the biggest obstacle that morning was someone went in for an emergency C-section and ours got bumped by 15 minutes. And it's like, ugh.
The inconvenience.
So, I know. Like, how long is this labor going to take? So anyway, but yeah, no, we had that kid, and I was determined not to feel anything about that kid or having a kid or anything like that. I just kind of had this mentality of like, I know I'm not like, I don't really have that sentimental capacity that a lot of people seem to have, but it's just 18 years. I can grind my teeth and just kind of fake it through the whole thing. Which was like a strong duty driven way to approach parenting, which isn't like there is a sense of duty with becoming a parent that should motivate you, but it's asking a lot of your emotional resilience to do something against your will as immersive as parenting for 18 years without finding any sense of enjoyment or satisfaction or any connection to it.
And it seems so that
like plan didn't work.
It seems like from your writing, just so I can help listeners understand kind of that you you found yourself entering parenting begrudgingly. There was a metamorphosis that took place, but it started with more like a begrudging, but it was more out of, I don't know what this is. I don't know how this is going to take away from my personal time. And we'll mention it later, but for those of you wondering, if you're into the Enneagram, what Mike's Enneagram number is, it is, drum roll,
a 5.
A 5.
5 with a strong wing 4. I think it explains some of the creative endeavors.
Which all of this makes so much sense, right? Of guarding that personal time, and being afraid of losing a sense of control over one's schedule, and in particularly one's energy, right? 5s really need to know that they're going to have energy for what is required of them every day. And we know, those of us who are parents, is you can make the best plans for the day with a child and it shifts. And so I can see why, and then also we know with those that lead with type 5, hobbies are really important. They nerd out over things that they love to go deep, and they love to go deep sometimes with others or just by themselves. But that space and time to go deep and be kind of in their Zen mode of gaining knowledge and gaining mastery is so, so important. And for you to go into parenting with no knowledge, no mastery, no prep, I mean, I can imagine it was daunting.
Yeah, it was like, I know I'm not going to be good at this, and I don't want to be good at it. Like, it's not an interest of mine. It's not a skill set I wanted. It probably won't surprise you, since you've known me as a parent past this period, but I would say I was in a depression that was getting worse and worse and worse and worse until 3 months after the baby was born. And at that point, I was so miserable that I went into counseling for the second time in my life. And this time I just wanted to talk about kids, and was sorting through lots of feelings that I think maybe this is an Enneagram 5 thing, maybe this is something else, but really good at creating rationale for my feelings, so that I can present my feelings as a rational argument rather than a feeling. So I'm like, I've built up all this argumentation and justified my feelings through, like, hard to argue with logic and reasoning, but you could dissect the logic and reasoning and it wouldn't move me at all, because it's not based on that. It's actually based on a feeling. And I had a very good therapist who was able to help me kind of like sort through and name things, and even find ways to like articulate my needs, which it didn't feel like it felt like an inconvenient time to be sharing my needs. There's like, they refer to the first 3 months as the fourth trimester of, like, developmentally, the baby should still be in the mother's womb. Like, it's that dependent on for life. But if it waited that long, it would be too large to pass through the mother. So they refer to that the first 3 months out of the womb as the fourth trimester. So it was an incredibly needy infant. My wife was on a maternity leave, but, working full time still, and, breastfeeding, and we're up all night and blah, 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 blah. It didn't feel like, it felt like an intrusion to me to say, like, oh, well, I actually have needs too. Like, I needed to be clear when I'm off the clock from baby duty. Otherwise, I will be trying to escape the room all the time, but never be able to relax or do something I enjoy, because I will feel like I can get called back into duty any second. Yeah. And these were very reasonable things to ask for that my wife was more than happy to give me. I just didn't feel like I had permission to ask, and I hadn't really organized my thoughts enough. So it's just like, once again, like, especially if you're an Enneagram 5, you will reach a blockage of, you can only sort through so much in your head without saying it out loud to another person. Which I love that. A really brutal reality. I still wish that weren't the case. Like, I know it's true and I live by it now, but I still would prefer my fictional world where I can sort through everything in my head without consulting anyone. I don't know. It's just how I'm hardwired.
That is a growth edge for those that lead with 5, is letting people into their inner world, letting people speak into their lives, and sharing themselves with others. And it's so interesting, like, these 2 times you used counseling, and it sounds like it was really helpful for you.
Yes, the first time I had to learn what counseling was. There's no way that I sound good in this story, but I'll say it anyway, because I was like an arrogant mid-20s something, and I felt like, I'm pretty intelligent, and so I don't have to listen to this therapist unless they can prove they're more intelligent than I am. So I was like,
challenge.
Testing their mettle. Right. I was like, I want you to, like, wow me. I'm going to sit back with my arms crossed. And I was like, first of all, I have a very narrow definition of intelligence. And secondly, I wasn't hitting problems in my life as a result of lack of intelligence. So it wasn't, I didn't need someone to coach me or bolster me on intelligence. I needed someone to get me trained up in this area where I was really, really weak. And my second therapist that I had after the first baby came gave me language that has haunted me, because he said that I really needed to work on building my frustration muscle. That I was like, I feel like I'm being infantilized, but apparently that is I have an infant's level frustration muscle. Like when I get disappointed or frustrated, I just have disproportionate responses to it because I'm used to being able to pick things up and do them pretty fluidly and pretty well. And I think the truly haunting part about that is that our preschool teacher told me that our oldest daughter needed to build her frustration muscle. And I was like, hey, we have a new bonding activity. We can just go, the two of us can go, since we're on about the same level with this, we can go do things that will frustrate us to no end and just be there for each other.
And learn to just flex through it.
Yeah. But I do think that's part of, having 2 parents and 4 grandparents around and being an only child is we didn't let her struggle with enough stuff early on, because there was, if she couldn't open a bag of, goldfish, she would never even try. She would just very politely hand it to an adult and say, could you please do this? And we were like, oh, she's using her manners. And it's like, but she's not using her fingers. Like, and she doesn't, like, we would say, could you try to open it? Just pull it. And she would try it and start crying because she was frustrated and it didn't work. And instead of letting her do that, we would rush over and open it. So we were reprimanded by a preschool teacher this year, which is a great way to keep your ego in check.
Oh yeah, no, ego deconstruction is part of parenting. I can tell you that. So back to, this depression that you had leading into having a baby that you didn't feel ready for. I think the metamorphosis with a beautiful story is kind of what happened when that lifted and you saw your heart kind of changing over time. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I think I struggle to find the right language for it, but all I can think to say is that I thought the human heart had a finite capacity and that I already knew the boundaries of it. And I was like, well, I love what I do, and I love my hobbies, and I love my wife, and I love my cats, and I love coffee, and I love all this other stuff. And the only way for me to love a new thing would be to shrink, repartition the heart and shrink those other things, or get rid of, Lord forbid, get rid of something I love in my life. But what I found is that, the human heart has this ability to grow and welcome new things. It didn't diminish any of my other loves, and didn't even necessarily overshadow them. It just was like, oh yeah, there's plenty of space. Like, let's open it up and welcome this first child, which I gotta say, knowing, like, having experienced that once made it so much easier to have a second child. Like my disposition in the delivery room for the 2 children are just like 2 extremely different people. Like one of them, like the first one, I was sitting there, like they tried to hand me the baby. I didn't want to hold the baby. And I was sitting there totally emotionless, not feeling anything. While I was waiting to be called into the C-section room, I was just like, praying to like keep my composure, not in an emotional way, but like in a, like, don't get angry, don't say anything chippy, don't say anything passive aggressive, like keep yourself under control. And the second time I was like looking forward to this, and we'd actually experienced a miscarriage in between the 2. So I was having all this anxiety, and I had just turned 40, which feels like kind of an old dad to me. So I had like all this anxiety, and like the moment the baby like came out and I heard like a healthy scream and I saw a normal looking kid, like I was just crying for the next 15 minutes. And I'm not really a person who, like, I don't choke up at movies. I didn't cry at all over my first daughter's birth or, anything like that. Didn't cry at my wedding. So it was just like, oh my gosh, like this whole new compartment of my heart and life opened up,
Mm.
and now I'm able to celebrate and enjoy this thing. But it's just one of those things that you really can't know it until you experience it. Like yeah, I would imagine 25-year-old me listening to this podcast, and I'm like, okay, so this guy was secretly sentimental all along. That's still not me. It's like, I promise you, I'm not that guy. I still go see, although I will say, after you have a kid, Pixar movies are much more effective at what they're trying to do.
Before having kids and this fear of I'm not going to have enough room for them. I'm not going to have enough. I'm going to have to give up things I love. Which all these are kind of true, but I'm going to have to give up things I love. I'm going to not have enough time for me. I'm going to lose a sense of self, like lose myself. I'm going to get swallowed up by this. And then realizing, just the way you said it, there are actually compartments of my heart that opened up.
Yeah, I mean, so I was like, this is the tricky thing. I was correct about everything I would be losing, but I was incapable of calculating what would be gained. And I think,
Right.
Especially when it comes to like my inner life, I'm very conservative. Like I would rather trust the situation I have than gamble any of my personal time and space. So I think that's one of those things that, like, I think the good news is, like, the feelings can follow actions. And I think there's probably something in there for the people who really want kids and think they understand all of the change that will come. But like, I feel pretty certain you can't know everything you will experience in advance. So I think, for me, it ended up being a lot of pleasant surprises, because I expected a worst case scenario for everything. I would imagine if I went into it from the other angle, there would have been a lot of unpleasant surprises that would have taken a different type of like recalibration and thinking.
That's true. I think that's true. People that kind of go in with a Pollyanna view, kind of like everything's going to be fine. This is going to be great. It's amazing. And then they go, wow, this is really hard. And you kind of went at from the other
My life
side
is
of the
over.
continue. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, here's something that the reason why I really was excited for you to come on and share your story is that, we talk a lot about postpartum depression with women. We talk about miscarriages and how hard that is for women, and it is all of those things. Not that many men come forward and talk about the difficult transformation that happens for them when they become a parent. And because there is a lot of focus, the woman has the baby, and that is a very physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational experience. And the dads also have a very different experience, but it is a huge shift. And you were already depressed going into this, and then went through that fourth trimester, as you called it, in probably the worst depressed state. And so you were becoming a parent during a very challenging time for you. And like you said, you all experienced a miscarriage. And again, thank you for being courageous enough to talk about the guy's experience of that, and the emotion it brought you then when you had a healthy child. And I think what the other part I loved is how your daughter just found a way into your heart that was surprising to you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It was another weird configuration of my life, in that before our first daughter was born, I'd kind of burnt out in my primary vocation, which is another whole identity crisis thing that was going on, but I was working full-time in web development. And about 6 months into that job, I was approached by a Christian publishing company that wanted to bring me on as general editor, but very part-time, because they were like, we're small, but we're growing. And so I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. So I'll do that 8 hours a week. I'll go down to 32 hours a week at my main job. And about a year into that, I was like, these people don't know what they're doing. So I quit that job right around the time our first daughter was being born. And so I had this hole in my schedule for Thursdays for 8 hours. And my mother-in-law was like, well, I'll take her on Mondays. And my parents were like, we can watch her on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we needed to fill a Thursday hole, and I happened to have one, and I was like, no, 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 no. I'm not interested in the position. I'm flattered, but not interested. I'm the least qualified person. I don't know how to be alone with a baby or a toddler. And we talked about it. And basically the calculation was, well, either I take this since I'm already living the lifestyle where it would slide right in, or my wife, who is our primary breadwinner, goes and shrinks her income, which I was like, well, that would affect, my guitars and comic books and books and like all, like there's going to be something painful happening here one way or the other. So I was like, all right, well, we'll try the Mike watching the kid thing. And I didn't know like age appropriate things, but I got these like baby philosophy for baby board books that I started reading to her from a very young age. And I was like, I'm pretty certain I'm just reading these for my own amusement. But like the kid, especially early on, doesn't really care what you're reading. I think what matters is that they're sitting in your lap and you're having the bonding time. You're reading, you're pointing, you're enjoying things together, you're experiencing things together. And so, I mean, I would imagine we have 300-400 books in the house that are for children under the age of 5. And we've read each of them dozens of times, like some of them hundreds of times. So it's like, we happen to be able to bond on a core level for me, which is, reading and shared experience and story. And then she started watching like full length Disney movies, I think a lot younger than she probably should have. But we had been telling her stories and we had like a book of The Lion King. And so she knew like the beats already. And then we'd shared the songs with her and she really liked the songs. So like when we finally introduced her to movies, she just started inhaling them and was like, I love story. I love like, and then she assigns us all characters and we're all playing different parts in the movie. So anyway, it was just like me just kind of showing up for it and hacking away at it and just trying to play to my strengths and being like, I don't know anything about kids, so I'm going to offer her these things. And, and when she was really young, I would sit and play guitar for her for a couple hours and she was, just sit there and babble and chew on things. And so I was like, yeah, I found a way to like work the things I know into this. And I think for most people, there's a way to make that work. Mm-hmm. She has not shown any interest in watching football or baseball.
Maybe that'll come later.
Actually, I kind of like it this way, that when she sees it on, she just walks right past the room. It's like, you go bother mom. So anyway, I don't know. I'm like, I certainly couldn't write a book on parenting. And so I felt like I was gifted a very unique match in children with temperament of me, because I'm like, I can imagine several other iterations of me doing what I did and it not working. So I feel very, but then like, right, I was about to say I feel very grateful, but it's like, well, that produces a feeling of gratitude. And when you have gratitude and you're, being given some kind of, reward, it kind of fuels motivation, gives you the energy to get back on the horse and try again next Thursday. So I took over that at the 4-month mark, and still have that as she's about to turn 4 years old. In fact, now I have Thursdays and Fridays with both kids.
And I know that I was going to point that out. Did you, who would have thought that, you were struggling to embrace the idea of becoming a parent, and now you are the stay-at-home parent for 2 days of the week and doing it fabulously as far as I can tell. And your posts on Instagram were so cute.
Better than others. I still feel I feel I think this comes through in the rest of my story and everywhere else, but I feel um, a certain need to display competence, and there's a lot of one-upsmanship with parenting. I don't know if you've ever encountered that, but
Just wait
there's
till
like
school age.
I can't believe how many parents I will talk to of kids Anya's age that that's my daughter's name, by the way, um, that are like, Anya will try to talk to their kid about Little Mermaid or something, and the parents are like, "Oh, we've never let them see a screen before," and I'm like, "At age 4?" I'm like, "Really?" I mean, that's great. I don't know how to keep her totally busy now with the baby here without plopping in front of the TV. And I'm like, I know that everyone read the Jonathan Haidt book, and that's where a lot of this comes from. But if you actually read the book and not just hear about the book, if you actually read the book, he actually thinks like long form storytelling on a screen is fine. He's against like the tablet, like the
Right.
short attention span reward, the little clip culture and like swiping and scrolling and interacting every 10 seconds. He's like, that's bad. Like it still requires a certain level of intellectual discipline and engagement to watch a film telling one cohesive narrative, as
Well, and then
opposed
I
to like
think as parents,
TikTok
when
reels.
you do watch something with your kids, a long form story, then you can talk about that story at dinner. You can talk about that story if you're teaching kind of your family values and things like that. One thing, just shifting over to one of the things you answered, this one of the questions we give our guests that you answered, is what are you doing to build your own resilience today? And in perfect leading with the 5 Enneagram style, you become a student. And you say, I've become a student of good parents. Um, and yeah, I love what you wrote there.
I'm not pulling it up to see what I wrote. I completely affirm what you just said. It sounds like something I would say.
Well, you
Um,
say, as someone inclined towards introversion, I do a lot of observations, but there are a lot of highly skilled parents around us, people I meet, at the library, other at preschool, parents at our church, and especially empty nesters. And I love that you're seeing value in parents who have parented across the developmental years. And you say parents are usually really comfortable with candor and I take advice from them. And I think that that's one of the 10 pillars of thriving. We have number 8 is having strong connections. So
yeah.
community is so important to our mental health and well-being. And obviously you're at a church, so you have a lot of possible, connections, but it seems like you're being really intentional about a connection with parents other than you, because it's something that you're really trying to grow in and you're being very intentional about that.
Yeah, and I think that again, I can grow in parenting and like how I think about it, and like my instinct in parenting is to take the easy way out of everything. Like if they're whining about something, like the kid would be spoiled rotten if it were up to me on my own with no input from anyone else. Thankfully, not only is my wife more naturally gifted at this, but she also reads and studies these things and talks to other parents. But like, we went to the library story time every Thursday for months and months and months. And I had met enough other parents there, and I became the organizer of events for that little cohort of library story time on Thursday mornings at the Wyoming Branch Library. Like we got together outside of that. Like one of them was a single mom. We found out like she got diagnosed with cancer and was going through treatment, and we were like making her meals, and it was like all these really deep bonds formed just because we were sitting there pretending our children were reading along with a woman who works at the library. And one of them now goes to Anya's preschool, and so we've just got all of these woven connections. But I learned something different from each of these parents, and you also get sometimes I see someone like, yes, that's a very good parent. Their child can count to 10 in English and Spanish, and they're not even 3 yet. But I will not be taking that elective course this semester. Like
Right.
I'm gonna audit that one. So I'm like,
So you can pick and choose.
yeah, you can pick and choose. Like I'm gonna play to my strengths. I'm gonna play to my interests. You do have to learn hard things in order to grow. In fact, I was talking to your husband And by the way, one thing I do to build resilience is not just being a student of other parents, but also taking time off of parenting.
Yes. I'm
And
glad you said that.
the last couple times, like a couple years ago, like your husband and I got together for coffee, and we were like, we're going to talk about this, this, and this, and we both really enjoyed spending time with each other. And so next time it was like, we're going to talk about this, this, and this, and eventually we got to the point in the last year where it was just, we're going to get together, end of like, there was no more need for an agenda.
Yeah.
And that's when things become really life-giving for me, is like,
Mhm.
we're going to show up, and I don't know what we're going to talk about or how long we're going to meet necessarily. And so he's become one of those people for me, which I, kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I think we got together to talk about business, about something. And so now we get to enjoy that. And I've got that, thankfully, with a number of people. But yeah.
Strong connections. I can't tell you like how many people who are struggling in life don't have access to true connected community or a couple of really deep friends. And it is a gift. It is something you have to be intentional. You have to set aside time. But I can see for you also, you're like, on top of being a parent, yes, I can work on that, but I also need to stay in touch with who I am by doing things that I enjoy, that give me life. And neither of these take away from each other. It actually is an enriching thing. The other pillar you talked about, I want to mention pillar number 6, which is practicing gratitude and contentment. So that's one of our pillars. You mentioned that a few times. Practicing gratitude.
And I think, and the funny thing is, where I was going with the story with your husband is, I was telling him last time we were together, I was like, I think I was happier on a day-to-day basis before I had kids, but I was a lot less content in life. And wouldn't it be great if those two things could just be elevated at the same time? And he got like a big grin on his face, like, yep, that's how it works. That's how growth works. And I was like, yeah, it's embarrassing to only be discovering that now in life. But I'm like, yeah, that's like the discomfort and day-to-day frustrations that accumulate also build resilience, but they also will give you like a gratitude for like the down times, the easy times when you have an easy day with both kids or something like that. But yeah, to me, it's both keeping those connections that strengthen my parenting and keeping those connections that, for lack of a better word, are a distraction from my parenting. They like take my mind off of it, because I'm like, I can't imagine like someone that is like a full-time mom or dad at home, and if their only social life were like mom and dad groups, which I think is what society would push them to do. Like, oh, here's a mom's group. You want to go to church? Here's a mom's small group. Here's a this. It's like, well, like, what about my identity apart from being a mom? I was a person for a whole number of decades before I became a mom. Like, what happened to that part of me? So the biggest challenge has been keeping that while holding it loosely. It's like, it's like, I can't begrudge the weeks where, and then not feeling guilty when you get to embrace it. Because, I'm taking a vacation at the end of the summer to go visit a Comic Con in Oakland, California, that a local comic shop out there is doing. It has a bunch of the writers that I really enjoy. And I'm taking this 5-day vacation without my wife or kids. And I'm like, I'm even self-conscious talking about it because it sounds so selfish to me. Yeah. But it's like, when I mentioned this possibility to my wife, I was like, so there's this thing I kind of like to go to, and your sister's out there, so I could stay for free, and I could see our new niece, who we haven't met yet. She was like, go, like, let me book the ticket, get out of here. Like, you need to decompress so badly. And it's like, again, like, usually people are more ready to meet your needs than you would expect, especially when you have the strong connections, which, you can't have one without the other. You have to be vulnerable and express yourself in order to have the strong connections. Otherwise, they will maintain superficial connections forever, which is the classic, like, Brian Regan stand-up bit about men's bonding. about how, have you heard that stand-up bit where,
No.
yeah, like the joke is, you will put the YouTube link in the description, but he tells a joke about how he went golfing with his friend for like 8 hours, and his wife came home and was like, "So how's Gary?" And he's like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Weren't you,
I think
weren't
I
you
have
just
seen
with him for 8 hours?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Did you tell me to ask him? I didn't, I just didn't think to ask him how he was." And she's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't remember that you asked me." She's like, "Well, I just thought it would have come up naturally." And he's like, "Nope,
Nope.
not with two men golfing for 8 hours."
Well, how amazing that you have a wife that celebrates who you are, that supports your need. And as I know you do hers, and what her needs are. But interesting that counselor that told you you need to let people know your needs. And that has really been something that's helped you navigate this new role of dad. And I know that you need to go, but I do want to read your growth gift that you gave.
Oh
We
yeah.
ask every guest, what is a growth gift of the struggles that you've been through and the resilience that you have gained from those struggles? Because this podcast is built on that theme of we cannot be resilient without going through hard things. And instead of fighting the hard things, maybe we can learn from the hard things. And I love that I want to quote you because it was so beautiful. You said, "I'd call the growth gift a kind of trust that the heart grows rather than shrinks. I expected that adding a child would mean subtracting from everything else I loved, that I would have to partition my heart into smaller and smaller pieces. Instead, I found the heart expands to make room. I hope that people who are ambivalent or afraid of a big change, whether it's parenting or something else, hear that they don't have to feel ready or even willing beforehand. Showing up can come first, and the feeling can follow." And I was like, I want to quote this. I think it's just so well said. So thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, I'm glad to know. I hope that connects, and I think what I told you was when we were like pre-planning this, I was like, I hope we do an episode where if there's a woman listening to it, they're like, "Oh, my partner needs to hear this," and they pass this to them, because I wouldn't say that I'm, the stand-in for every man, but I'm certainly the stand-in for many men when it comes to parenting. And
Yeah.
the more candid I am with men, the more candor comes back to me. People are like, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to be changing diapers. I didn't want to do this, this, and this. Like, I really miss, watching college football all day Saturday," or whatever their thing was. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, it's okay. We can talk about that. We can grieve that loss together while also going through this together and enjoying the parts that can be enjoyed.
Yes.
And not pretending that it's all enjoyable. It's,
Right.
another big
Taking
piece
all
of
of it. Yeah. Well, is there any last word? I think you kind of just said it, but
No, I think that's that's it for me. Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me yet another space to process this, because I found that even discussing it, even doing the questionnaire, helped me put language to this
Mhm.
ever evolving thing. Because I'm like 9 months into the second kid. Like, I will
Right.
laugh this time next year. I'll be laughing at what I thought I knew about having two kids.
Yeah.
Or at least I hope I will.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to say is I think I referenced it in here somewhere. It's not a parenting book. It's just a really great book by a woman named Heidi White called The Divided Soul. And
Okay.
she goes through classic literature using the lens of duty and desire. And she goes through she goes through the Bible and classic literature, and basically shows how protagonists struggle when they are caught at the crossroads between duty and desire. And the ideal place to land is where our desires are brought into alignment with our duties.
Okay.
And it's a very, very cool book. It has nothing to do with parenting, but it actually helped me parent. It's just
Right.
it's one of those things where every once in a while, and you'll see like a movie or something that doesn't really have to do with parenting, but for some reason it just hits you at the right time in the right place, and something falls into place. And so, yeah, she's a podcast. She does a literature podcast,
Okay.
and that's the first book she's published, and it was really great, because I was like, I was falling in line dutifully with being a parent, but I was not. I had no desire for it, and I committed to the duty, and the desire sort of backfilled, which like, it's just what I'm. And then for my second child's birth, my duty and desire were in alignment, and I had the experience that I should have had the first time through having a child born.
Wow.
So it is just amazing how your heart can adapt and your feelings can catch up with your commitments and your actions.
Wow. So well said. We'll link that book in the show notes because it sounds like it was really impactful for you, and it should probably be for someone else who might be really resonating with your story. So thanks so much. I know you need to scoot to go get your daughters.
Yes.
Okay.
Gonna go play with them outdoors in
the heat.
Feels like 99-degree weather.
That's right.
So
well, thanks again, Mike. I really
we're all
appreciate
gonna be crabby
it.
tonight.
Thanks for joining us at Thrivist, where talk transforms and builds resilience in an unpredictable world.